Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. We are finally live. I apologize for the interruption in service last night. More technical problems, but it was actually a good thing because I've been working on upgrades to the computer systems here, as we've mentioned, and that's why we weren't live last night, because some of the big changes, the hardware upgrades, the hard drive transfers, all the things that had to be done, it just didn't quite work out. It looked like everything was stable, and then it wasn't. Now, I don't know. Check the mic. I'm getting a message. Check the mic. What's wrong with the mic? We don't have any audio on the mic. Ah, okay, I see. Wrong microphone. All we have to do is as we try to show on the road properly. No. Hang on. Is that better? Bad. Bear with me while we work out all these problems. How about that? Is that better? Do we have audio now? Better now? How are we doing? Okay, so is it distorted? That's the other question. Sounds a little distorted on my end, but is it clean on your end? Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully it's balanced with the clips that we run tonight. This is the one of our other microphones, so we may have to go back to the other one as long as it works out. We'll see. Much to talk about tonight. Big announcement today with Prime Minister and Premier of Alberta, Danielle. Of course, talking about energy pipeline, announcing a deal on carbon taxing and a plan to finally get a pipeline built from Alberta to the West Coast. Not a done deal, but all the groundwork laid, apparently. So we'll dip into that tonight. And this comes on the heels of another big energy announcement coming from the Prime Minister yesterday. And we have so much other stuff going on out there tonight. We have Trump returning from his trip to China, kind of a few things in hand, but mostly empty-handed. We'll outline some of the details on that, dip into the rhetoric and also the reality of the trade mission to China. And we've got other stuff too. Culture wars. We have, oh my goodness, what else? Children being poisoned with nicotine. We have the latest as well, I think, from Ukraine and what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. So, with all that in mind, we will come back on the other side and start digging into tonight's top news stories. Stay with me.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
All right. So, Alberta could be constructing a new oil pipeline as early as the fall of next year. Oil flowing through it as early as 2033, 34, but still no clear private sector investment in this. It's all been, I guess, green-lit by government on all levels. But still some work to be done. They need to attract the capital, the investment, the private sector element in all of this. Today, Mark Carney and Danielle Smith getting together in Calgary to sign this updated deal outlining what the federal government will work towards, which is to designate the pipeline a project of national interest by October of this year. And Smith clearly excited about it. Appeared to be anyway. And we've got the news conference for you. So let's bring it up and dig into it. Here we go. This is the way it went down earlier today.
Well, thank you, everyone. And hello, today is a good day for Alberta, and it's a good day for Canada. It's an honor to be here with Prime Minister Mark Carney to announce a major step forward in unlocking the enormous potential of Canadian energy. And I'm happy to share with Albertans that we'll be signing an agreement today that clearly sets out a pathway to the construction of a new oil pipeline to Asian markets, commencing as early as September 1st, 2027. The proposed West Coast oil pipeline would transport more than 1 million barrels of oil per day. This landmark agreement builds on the collaboration between the federal and provincial governments following the signing of the Alberta-Canada Energy Agreement, which was signed in November of 2025. Our governments have agreed to make targeted changes to our respective environmental policies that will lead to tangible outcomes that reduce regulatory uncertainty and create the conditions necessary for Alberta to significantly increase its energy production and exports to Asian and other markets. Today's implementation agreement also results in Alberta avoiding a significant increase to the federally mandated industrial carbon price, saving Alberta's industry partners approximately $250 billion in compliance costs over the next 2 decades to 2050. Under the new carbon pricing agreement, the industrial carbon price will be substantially lower than the previous federal policy, which would have required a carbon price of $170 per tonne by 2030. The headline carbon price will be substantially rolled back. It'll stay at $95 until the end of this year, and then it will increase to $100 for the next 3 years and reach $130 per tonne by 2035. This gives industry the time and certainty needed to plan, invest, and deliver real emissions-reducing projects without undermining competitiveness. It means that we're much closer to attaining our joint ambition to make Canada into a global energy leader and a trusted supplier of responsibly produced, lower emissions energy in the world. We've accomplished a lot together in less than 6 months. We've removed barriers that were holding back investment, like the clean electricity regulations and the proposed oil and gas emissions cap, and we've reached key agreements with the federal government on impact assessment cooperation, on methane equivalency, which we expect to finalize this year. Both governments also remain committed to working together with the Oil Sands Alliance, formerly Pathways companies, to advance the completion of the world's largest carbon capture, utilization and storage infrastructure project. At the same time, we're advancing the final submission to the West Coast Pipeline to the Major Projects Office by July the 1st. We're also establishing an electricity working group with the federal government to explore new low emissions technology, including nuclear, geothermal, abated natural gas, wind, solar, and hydrogen. As this work advances, the governments of Alberta and Canada remain committed to respecting constitutionally protected rights, engaging in early, consistent, and meaningful consultation with First Nations, and working with Indigenous communities to support opportunities for ownership and partnership. And I do want to sincerely thank the Prime Minister and his officials for approaching these negotiations in a genuine spirit of collaboration and in pursuit of a stronger, more secure, and an independent future for Canada. I also want to thank people across Alberta for their patience and for keeping faith throughout this process. Thank you, and I'll now turn it over to the Prime Minister.
Well, thank you. To be clear, I was clapping for the Premier there. I wasn't clapping for I want to thank you, Premier, on behalf of the people of Canada and behalf of my colleagues, both in Parliament and my officials and your officials, for the cooperative spirit and the hard work to get us where we are. As you said, we've accomplished a lot in the last 6 months, and we've accomplished it together, and I think that's the important point. You know, last week, the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, visited Canada, and he spoke about the most important commodity in the world, something that Canada has in abundance, something that we're building today, and that's trust. Trust to double the reliable and affordable energy available to Albertans. As the Premier just said, drawing on all the resources of this great province, natural gas, renewables, extending potentially out to nuclear, geothermal, and beyond. We're building trust of investors, that Alberta and Canada are reliable and attractive destinations where opportunities are plentiful, the rules are clear, and one project means one review. The trust of Asian countries who want our energy because they know that we are a safe, stable, reliable partner in a world that is anything but. Today's implementation agreement is comprehensive and it's interconnected. It covers, amongst other things, regulation, markets, methane, renewables, and carbon capture. It includes, as you just heard, Alberta's commitment to submit a comprehensive proposal for a bitumen pipeline to Asian markets to the Federal Major Projects Office by Canada Day, by July 1st this year, and Canada's commitment to pursue the designation of that proposal as a project of national interest under the Building Canada Act by the 1st of October. Now, earning trust, as we all know, it requires more than just ambition. It requires partnership and it requires cooperation. Cooperation that respects our duty to consult and ensures Indigenous economic benefits and opportunities for co-ownership exist in every project. Cooperation that recognizes British Columbians should share in substantial economic benefits from projects that impact them. And cooperation that will create tens of thousands of high-paying, rewarding, not just jobs, but careers across the skilled trades, engineering, and beyond. And today's agreement is also about creating a better world for our kids and our grandkids through major investments that will help put Canada on the path to net zero. Through a methane equivalency agreement that will lower methane emissions from oil and gas by 75% below 2014 levels by 2035. And through carbon markets that work. When we signed the MOU in November, an oversupply of credits had driven prices.
I'm going to pause it there for a moment. I'm just going to ask a question. Do you guys know what net zero means? I was thinking about it overnight. These phrases, words are thrown around without definitions or explanations often. And I'm just wondering, what do you guys think net zero means? No cheating. Put it in the comments. Don't look it up. Don't use AI. I really want to know what's in your heads. Because I rarely ever hear it explained. Yeah, Dragon says no, net zero, no clue. Like, be honest. Does anybody really know? No. Okay, you think about it. Stop breathing. Not quite. I don't think so. Please elaborate. Okay, I will. Let's play this. We'll come back to it after we finish with the clip.
Prices as low as $20 a ton, $75 below the headline price. And today, as you've just heard, Canada and Alberta have agreed to create markets that deliver an effective carbon price of $130 per ton by 2040, with binding annual benchmarks along the way. We will also issue 75 million tons of carbon contracts for difference to support major carbon capture, clean energy, other emission reduction projects, with the cost shared equally between us. In other words, we will have skin in the game so that that market actually works. Nous mettons en place un marché du carbone qui fonctionne. Un marché efficace qui offrira aux investisseurs la certitude à long terme nécessaire pour faire progresser les grands projets, développer le secteur énergétique du Canada et contribuer à atteindre la carbone neutralité d'ici 2050. Les énergies renouvelables deviendront plus compétitives grâce à l'accélération des processus d'approbation, à des nouvelles mesures fédérales et des incentives fédérales, ainsi qu'au contrat des différences. L'énergie la plus compétitive est celle qui est à faible coût, à faible risque et à faible émission. And that's the principle behind the Oil Sands Alliance, formerly Pathways, the largest global initiative for carbon capture and storage. And the proposed pipeline depends on that alliance, which will achieve emissions reductions equivalent to taking 90% of the vehicles off Alberta roads while generating over $16 billion in GDP as part of this overall package, which can create up to 50,000 jobs in Alberta and across Canada. Which brings me to Canada. Today is also about building trust in a Canada that works. A Canada rooted in cooperative federalism where we build together, pragmatically and ambitiously, to achieve our shared ambitions. A Canada where our differences are strengths to be nurtured and respected, not risks to be managed. A Canada that's strong but good. A Canada that's not just prosperous but fair. Not just for some, most of the time, but for all of the time. Let me finish on a personal note. Some of you know I was born in Fort Smith, just north of the Alberta border. I was almost born in Alberta. I was born in the Northwest Territories, but in many ways just not far from the oil sands. And when I was born, the oil sands were a concept, a curiosity to most, a dream to but a few builders. By the time I was in junior high with Alex Porbay, some of you would know I was in junior high with Alex Porbay, junior high in Edmonton, the oil sands had been transformed already by that point to one of Canada's largest industries, and it happened because of the brilliance of our scientists, the drive of our entrepreneurs, yes, the support of provincial and federal governments, and the dedication of our skilled workers. And that's the legacy that we're building on today. Carbon capture that creates an entirely new industry, an affordable low carbon grid that's doubled, that draws on all of Alberta's strengths, and a low carbon oil pipeline that bolsters our independence. Building big, building fast, building bold again, building with trust, an Alberta strong and a Canada strong for all. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. We just. There we go. Yes, you're going to follow me, and we're going to go through there. Now we're going to go back to work.
Okay, so that's the way that went down. Okay, let me take a short break. We'll come back and I'll provide a little bit of depth on it, and then we'll get some of the reaction.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so I think the idea of net zero is a little bit hard to grasp, but the simplest way to explain it, I think, is to say that it's about balancing consumption against emissions. So as much energy that is produced, you need to reduce emissions or eliminate an equivalent amount of emissions. And the emissions can be, so if you're producing a lot of oil, or if you're burning a lot of even coal, and there's a lot of pollution going into the air from that, or some, it's not that you want to requiring that all of that be eliminated, but you can also have offsets that they invest in. So you can buy as a big company, carbon offsets is what they would call them, carbon, but it really represents air pollution. And then you could, those funds can be used then to do things like plant more trees in order to absorb carbon dioxide and pollutants in the air, to purify the air naturally. So that's one way of offsetting the emissions that are created through the consumption of energy. And I think that depending on what government is doing it and how the plan is rolled out, they also have provisions in legislation or incentive programs or taxation or tax rebates or even subsidies or grants to individuals, to homeowners, and things like that to insulate your house or seal it up so that it's more energy efficient and you can get credits for those kinds of things. So each government kind of approaching these things in their own ways and bringing some market principles to bear here, or companies that produce carbon. If you're producing automobiles, for instance, there can be taxation on the companies producing vehicles with internal combustion engines, and they give credits to companies that are producing electric cars, and then the companies can actually trade them back and forth. That's how Tesla actually became as profitable, not really so profitable. That's where a lot of their revenue has come from, because by setting up an electric car company, not producing any internal combustion engines, they were afforded tax credits, which they could then sell to the other car companies to offset their penalties for producing gasoline-powered vehicles. And then the taxation system is set up so that a lot of the money gets funneled back into programs to hopefully at some point get to what they call net zero, where as much pollution is being recycled back through the environment and through capture programs like carbon capture, where pollution is pumped down into the ground under pressure and sealed up so that it never escapes back up into the atmosphere. Those kinds of things, so that you get, in total, in theory, the equivalent of net zero. So as much pollution goes into the air, an equivalent amount is then captured through various means, either naturally or through technology. That's what the goal is. It's not to say that they're going to ban oil or ban coal, but they're using a mix of energies and energy efficient technologies to create what you would call a balance in the whole thing, an ecosystem where, because we live in a terrarium, as much, if you're breathing air, you want to make sure that there are plants there to recycle the carbon dioxide back into oxygen so that we don't suffocate on the planet. That's a very simplistic explanation of what net zero is all about. Is it realistic? I think technology makes it possible to do just about anything, honestly. Whether it's safe or not, there are big issues that have to be grappled with, dealt with over time. But you've seen, even within gasoline and diesel engines, clean diesel, clean burn coal, those kinds of technologies have really made a huge difference in reducing smog, which we talked about a week ago here on the program. Huge reductions in smog in major cities, and even here I don't see it anymore because of the scrubbers that were put on smokestacks, coal burning plants, and smokestack industries as well. So a lot of that stuff has just been cleaned right up, and technology is really, I think it's going to take us to new places in the next decade or two. And the goal in Canada, I think, is to reach net zero by not 2030. That's the trigger date that makes everybody have a mind meltdown. Actually, 2050 is the goal to reach complete net zero. And could we do it? Yeah, maybe. A lot. Think about the technological advancements we've made. Even in the last 10 years, 20 years, huge leaps in all kinds of technologies. And as I've pointed out on the program, several times today, a 5-liter V8 engine, gasoline engine from Ford, gets better fuel economy and produces far less pollution than a 4-cylinder internal combustion engine in a Ford Pinto from the 1970s. And yet it produces like 4.5 times as much horsepower. So incredible gains in efficiencies and huge reductions in emissions because of all kinds of technologies. So I'm a big believer in people. We can achieve incredible things over time, and put these naysayers and these people who are so negative and doomsdayers to put their concerns to rest. We're all supposed to be dead by now. When I think back to the 1970s when I was a kid, the predictions of overpopulation and there won't be enough food. These things have not come to pass. We were supposed to be living in an environmental dystopia at this point, flooded out, bombed out, starving to death, overpopulated, and the planet basically destroyed. That just hasn't happened because we have all kinds of mechanization, technological innovation on the agricultural front, so that we're producing much higher yields and crops, and we're doing all of this now in ways that already produce far less pollution than we ever did back in the 70s and 60s when I was growing up. I look at the Great Lakes and how filthy dirty they were. Lake Erie was dying when I was a kid, but today it has really sprung back to life. And while there's still challenges there, I look at the lake and it's much cleaner than it was back then. Far, far cleaner. And companies no longer just dumping effluent into waterways. At least in most cases, they're following the rules and sometimes getting caught doing bad things. But huge leaps made forward in all of that. So that's what net zero is about. But it's used as a trigger by a lot of people for political reasons on both sides, because on the left, it's all being presented as a really positive thing. And on the other side, it's being portrayed as it's all about control and you can't have it. They're going to ban all the oil. Not quite. I think they do take a lot of it too far, and the climate change stuff, I question a lot of what they say, because I think that it is political as much as it is scientific. But just look at what's going on in our country right now. There's pragmatism in play, on display right, today in this news conference. We're building a pipeline. We're going to try to build a pipeline if we can get a private company or companies to get involved, from Alberta out to the West Coast, over the Rocky Mountains, which is a huge undertaking. That in itself will require a lot of innovation and expertise, which Canada already has. But we're going to build that pipeline. It's going to take years to build it, though. It's a massive, massive project. It will create, I don't even know how many jobs and how many spin-off jobs, but a huge investment to build not just Alberta, but the entire country, and BC will benefit as well. But you don't build something like that if you don't plan to use it. I say the same thing about the people who say, you're not going to be able to drive your car. You're going to be living in a prison city. Then why are they building all these roads and expanding the highway system, or trying to, up in Toronto? Like, they're spending massive amounts of money up there to deal with the traffic problems, and the traffic is terrible up there, but they have the projections. They know that the traffic levels are going to increase over the next 10, 15, 20 years. They have to do something about it. That's why they're talking about building a tunnel underneath everything. When I go to Houston, when I've been to Houston a long time ago now, haven't been over to the States lately much, and why. But you drive through Houston and they have all these like raised, what do you call them? Overpasses, right? Long expanses of them. It's like a city of the future. That's an amazing city. And maybe Toronto could learn a thing or two from Houston, go down there and take a look at the way they've got their highway system set up, especially like within the city itself. And it actually looks very futuristic. I I took note of that when I was there briefly a couple of times. Anyway, all this going on today, coming on the heels of what Carney announced yesterday, which is this major energy strategy. He's calling it the National Electricity Strategy, and it's also an ambitious plan. It dovetails into what we heard about today. But yesterday he was talking about doubling Canada's electricity grid capacity by 2050 again, right? And why is that? Because that is the goal to achieve net zero in Canada. So he's focused very much on electrification. That means heating your home with electricity instead of oil or even natural gas, and using a variety of technologies. But even natural gas is pretty darn clean, and we have an abundance of that too. But you can offset the emissions from that by planting a lot of trees, which around here we could certainly do a lot more of that, because if you fly over where I live in this part of Ontario, you get up in a small plane and you look down, there are no trees left here because of all the farming that is, moved into the area and all the industrialization over the years. It's been basically just been clear cut, and there's just nothing there, just strips of trees. And it creates the illusion when you're on the ground that there are more trees than there really are. But you think back, this whole place was practically a rainforest before we came in with our saws and started cutting all the trees down. Anyway, Carney says that his strategy is going to deliver clean, reliable, more affordable power for Canadians with major investments in generation, transmission, distribution, storage, grid modernization, which we really need anyway, because our electricity grid here is really aging. It's fragile. It needs to be hardened so that it's more resilient against snowstorms, serious storms in the summertime, knock the power out around here all the time. Even in, cities, not just rural areas and remote areas. The electrical infrastructure needs upgrading, and it's about time we got to it. So the government's adjusting clean electricity regulations to provide more flexibility, including an expanded role for natural gas, and still targeting significant emissions reductions, as I said, as part of the whole plan. And I'll tell you this, I've come to realize that in Canada in particular, because resources are controlled by provinces, that's their area of stewardship and jurisdiction, there are also only so many ways that the federal government can apply taxation to resources, because the provincial governments control what basically is what comes out of the ground, through even critical minerals and even just natural resources. So environmental taxes, that's one of the ways the federal government is allowed under the Constitution to tax resources. That's sort of the thing that they don't explain to us, because it's sort of a quiet thing they have to not say, because I think it will get some of the separatists extremely upset. That's why you're always hearing them talking about get rid of the carbon tax, because that's one of the main methods the federal government can actually apply taxation to resources. Without environmental taxes, or carbon taxes, as they're being called today, it eliminates one of the methods the federal government can take its share of revenue from resources. And so I'm not sure what you heard what the carbon tax level negotiated today is going to be. So many dollars per ton, right? So that's why. At the end of the day, I'll tell you this, if the government gets rid of, if for whatever reason they scrap the carbon tax, they'll just tax it a different way, because the government always finds a way to tax us. As they say, there's There are only two things in life that are certain, and that is death and taxes. So carbon tax, sales tax, excise tax, just because we want to tax you tax, sales tax, whatever tax, a consumption tax, a disposal tax, they'll tax it one way or another, whether it's a carbon tax or just a Mark Carney, I would just feel like taxing you tax, they'll get to you one way or another. And if they have to use particular legal language to comply with the Constitution, they'll do that. So I don't like taxes. I want lower taxes, but even here, there is again pragmatism, practicality coming to the surface here because of the realities of the changing global political situation, because of the internal politics in Canada, the pressure being brought to bear against governments. That's why even yesterday, I think it was Hodgson in another news conference related to energy, highlighted the fact that even before, one of the first things the federal government did when Carney took office is they came in and they axed the tax, which Pierre Poilievre was calling for from the very beginning, 28 cents a liter. And it made a huge difference, and it's providing a cushion right now against these, skyrocketing global oil prices, which are having a direct impact on the price of gas at the pump. And it's still too high. And I guess we're approaching, in some places in Canada now, record high gas prices, over $2 a liter in some places. Not that high where I live, but yeah, over $2 a liter. And we're getting warnings that it could go even higher, much higher, because of this instability in the Strait of Hormuz, which still has not been resolved. So much for a short little excursion that was supposed to end within, I think he said 3 to 4 weeks. And we're now heading into the third month plus. So brace yourselves, buckle up. This is not over yet. Here over on social media tonight, the Premier of British Columbia weighing in, responding just very recently, within the last hour or so, to the announcement today by Smith and Carney, David Eby, coming out with this. Let's go to his X account where he posts his statement. It cannot be the case, he says, that the projects that get prioritized in Canada are those where a premier threatens to leave the country. He says, next week I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister to bring him a list of projects we can work on for the benefit of all Canadians. Yeah, I think that he's got a point. It's not right to bring the country to the brink of an existential threat in order to get a pipeline built. On the other hand, should have built that pipeline a long time ago. So I see both sides, and that will get some people upset in itself. But here's his full statement today from Victoria. Premier David Eby has issued the following statement about the MOU between Alberta and the federal government. He says, as a country, it's time to stop rewarding bad behavior. It cannot be the case that the projects that get prioritized in Canada are those where a premier threatens to leave the country. Here in BC, we have what the rest of the world is looking for: critical minerals, natural resources, and port access. We have shovel-ready projects with real proponents and investments that will provide good-paying jobs and funding for public services. Some of our $88 billion in prioritized projects have already reached final investment decisions, creating thousands of new high-paying jobs. Despite this early success, our 35 additional job-creating projects need more attention from and coordination with Ottawa. These 35 projects will bring jobs and prosperity to all of Canada. The federal government must work as closely with us on these projects as they work with the government of Alberta on Premier Danielle Smith's proposed pipeline, a project that has yet to identify a proponent or a route. So, yeah, it's because they don't have a private investor. It's a little bit risky and a huge investment, especially when you have to go over the Rocky Mountains, which is a big obstacle. Anyway, he says, our government opposition to any repeal of the North Coast tanker ban has not changed. British Columbia is a vital part of Canada. We must work together across federal provincial lines to build this nation and to strengthen it. I know the Prime Minister believes we can work better in partnership as well. Next week, I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister to bring him a list of projects we can work on for the benefit of all Canadians. We will find a path forward together as Canadians. Canada is our strength. We love this country. Well, I like a lot of that talk. And I think there's a tone of negotiation in there as well. You know, BC wants its share of the pie. BC wants certain things. They have environmental concerns, and they want them addressed, and they shall be addressed one way or another. There's some messages coming in. I'll check that to see what it's more about. And while BC has its concerns, you know, the court decision this week that resulted in the quashing of the petition by the Separatists to get the question on whether Alberta should stay within Confederation. Get that on a ballot in the fall, quashed by the courts, saying that the process has been unconstitutional because First Nations have not been consulted. I think largely the two sides, or multiple sides, it's not just two, but opinions coming in on the court ruling, I think are largely, again, politically slanted. Sometimes I think not even fully informed or selectively informed, where the court decision itself, I think, is being either promoted or downplayed based on the views of the person presenting them, including Danielle Smith, who says that it's an error and it's undemocratic. And I don't really believe that either. I think that the court probably has a pretty valid point, but we shall see as it goes through the appeal process and people continue to express their concerns. But one way or another, there's no question that at some point in this process, the First Nations affected by this must be consulted, because it is required constitutionally, not just at the provincial level, but at the federal level as well. And whatever happens with regard to separation, it will definitely have, and is already having, an impact on First Nations communities, especially people affected or living within the boundaries governed by Treaties 7 and 8. But I'll tell you, some people out there just don't care. And so a lot of these separatists and the separatist leaders have been, saying, "Oh, don't you worry, the treaties, that's not an issue, and we'll honor the treaties if we do separate." They're full of crap, I think, and it's on full display here with somebody that I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. This guy Marty up north, under fire on social media. Just listen to what he says, and you tell me if this is respectful of First Nations and the treaties.
The judge is being disrespectful to me because, for all I know, my collection of signatures could be a waste of time. It's kind of bullshit. It's completely undemocratic, but I hope that this is what happens. I hope that Mitch Sylvester continues to let us collect signatures. I'll collect signatures no matter what. I'll be in contempt of court. Fuck the courts. I'll be in contempt. I will continue collecting signatures. It is my God-given right to do that. And if they want to put me in contempt and handcuff me and drag me into a car, so be it. But I hope Mitch continues to tell us to collect signatures, and I hope that just before May 2nd,
He can collect the signatures, and he can. There's no law against that, and that's not unconstitutional. Anybody can go out and get people to sign a petition. That's not the issue. The issue is the presentation of a petition in this case. Does that then create a situation where a certain number of signatures creates a binding requirement upon the government to present a question on whether a province gets to secede from the Confederation, from the country, to separate? That definitely has an impact on First Nations. The part of the question here is, at what point do they need to be consulted? Do they need to be consulted as the petition is being conducted? And because this is something that, anyway, just let it play.
Stops, counts them all, and announces to the world, including the judge, including Danielle Smith, including everybody else, that we have 400 or 500,000 signatures. I don't care, but I hope he continues that, and then we'll go to the next phase. Folks, we're not a serious country anymore. They're stealing everything from us. This whole question with the natives has to be resolved once and for all. Like, this is bullshit that we're being held hostage by a handful of fucking Indians.
Oh, and it came out at the end, didn't it? Yeah. Do you think that he wants to respect the treaties after Alberta separates? This is the thing. I mean, like, there's some weird thing, I think, in people's heads out there. It's like, we're going to separate, and this is going to solve all of our problems. It's not even beyond taxation, where they're being told, oh, we're going to get rid of, I think all the taxes. You won't have to pay taxes. Certainly they're saying they'll eliminate the income tax. What planet do you think you're going to be moving to where you're not going to pay any taxes? More than that, why do these people think that all the things that they have grievances over, all the things that they don't like, will suddenly just disappear, vanish as soon as they separate? What are they upset about? LGBTQS plus rights. They're upset about all these culture issues, language issues, immigration. Oh, they'll have more control over immigration. But what are you going to do with all the people who already live there that you don't like after separation? What happens to them? They're still going to be there. What are you going to do with all the people who support the NDP who you don't like? You going to deport them? You're a New Democrat. You're gone. They're going to be there. All the political tensions, all the fights over religion and gender identity, and I mean, you pick the issue, it will all still be there, because the issues come from the people, and diversity of opinion, diversity of belief, diversity of everything. And none of that changes just because you separate, except that they think maybe they're going to be in control of the government. And if they're in control of the government, how do you think that you're going to maintain control of the government so that all these other people who were in power before the UCP came in, what are you going to do to make sure that they don't come to power? What kind of government will you have? This is the thing. It's not really a fully formed idea. You see some smatterings of a plan out there, but there's really no full plan. Who's going to be running the joint? Jeffrey Rath? Keith Wilson? David Parker, the guy who is not cooperating with Elections Alberta on the data breach question, the guy who apparently was leading the charge on allegedly distributing the electors list, which they're downplaying and saying, oh, it's no big deal. It's just the phone book, which it's not. It's personal information. It's a data breach. Everybody's concerned about privacy, digital IDs. These guys have already shown that they don't care. They got access to digital information, your digital identification, almost 3 million Albertans. They're not supposed to have it, let alone use it, let alone not just leak it or make it available through a breach, but they published it and made it available on a website that's open to the public. Because the people making these issues an issue really don't care about the issues. Not really. They don't have any real convictions. There's no real virtue there. It's all disingenuous. They don't care. They just want whatever that is they're after, whether it's the money or the power, control. And you know, if it's a democracy, you're in power today and out of power tomorrow. And if you're a politician, you're here today, gone tomorrow. If it's a democracy, will it actually be a democracy? They're screaming bloody murder, saying this is undemocratic. Yeah, well, you weren't in power like a couple of years ago because you had the NDP in power. I always wondered, how did the NDP come to power in Alberta, which is supposed to be the most conservative province in the country, but they had an NDP provincial government. And it's been like that off and on. It kind of blows my mind at times, but there it is, because it's not as conservative as a lot of people think that it is. It's divided. So good luck with your separation and these grandeur, these visions of grandeur, or conservative, or it's not even conservatism. Not really. This is not classic conservatism at play. This is an aberration. And there's no real political conviction or ideological conviction out there other than money, power, control. And yeah, they don't like there is an ideology behind it where it's about tearing things down. This is what we don't like, but they're not telling you what they are going to give you. Not really, not in detail. They don't even have a leader. And I've listened to them online, and they're like, we can't have a leader. We don't want a leader, because they know as soon as they have a leader, it gives their political opponents, the pro-Canada side, a target, somebody to criticize. It becomes their version of a Mark Carney or a Justin Trudeau or a Naheed Nenshi, right? They don't want anybody over there that can be targeted. It's like shadow boxing, and you can't fight with a shadow. So it's like a little of this guy and a little of that guy, and who's really responsible? And it's all these multiple groups, and they publish the electors list and who's to be held accountable. And in the end, in my view, that alone, because it was being used to collect signatures, probably illegally, that should invalidate the entire petition. But that won't happen because the rules keep changing, and the premier is facilitating that, while at the same time giving us this word salad. Oh yeah, but I believe in democracy, and I believe in a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. What the hell does that even mean? Provinces are sovereign in a subnational sense, but a province can't grant itself more sovereignty than it already has under the Constitution. You can say that our constitutional rights as a subnational, not a national, not a nation state, but as a province with some sovereignty or some authority over certain aspects of governing the province. Some did some level of policing, stewardship of resources, certain kinds of laws, education, healthcare. Those are things that are under provincial sovereignty or authority or responsibility. And that's really where I think a lot of these political activists and even the politicians lose the script. Sovereignty should never really be about power over people or power over things. It's about responsibility in taking care of things and making sure that your social contract between government and the people is upheld, so that the government is responsible to the people and works for the people and is also responsible for taking care of the land and the resources and all of the areas where they have responsibilities, obligations to serve. That's what a politician is supposed to do, not control. And what's good for Alberta should be good for Canada, and what's good for Canada needs to be good for Alberta, and there needs to be balance. And good luck working it all out, because, my God, this is just getting started. I'll be back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So yeah, it's all about energy, right? That's it's at the heart of the matter. Energy is power. You can't have a prosperous economy without energy. You need affordable energy to fuel economic expansion and economic prosperity. It's vital. And Canada has plenty of it. We should be tapping into it. And that means not just oil, but it means a lot of electricity. And that means these modular nuclear plants that they're going to be building. Canada has that technology. We already export a lot of our nuclear technology for the production of clean energy. I have concerns about nuclear because it produces radioactive waste, which needs to be disposed of in a safe manner. It's difficult, right? So that stuff has to be buried deep underground or placed into storage someplace, because it'll be radioactive like forever in human terms. So, but you're never going to produce enough energy in the long run, or even short run, to meet the growing demands of a modern society without nuclear energy or fusion power, which they say is on the horizon. Canada has all of it, and I think it is the right focus. And I'm editorializing here, but I think I'm stating the obvious. We need to focus on that heading into the future. Carney knows it. Well, he should know it if he doesn't. They all know it. Trump knows it, even though he wants to live in the 1950s, or maybe even earlier than that. In his mind, he certainly still does, especially as he looks at industry, the stock market, and even this trip to China, where he wrapped that trip up. And what did he get out of this trip? The pro-Trump camp is portraying this as like some huge win, where he went over there and he's changing the geopolitical landscape and getting the world to pivot away from China. Not true. That's really not true. On the other hand, the other side is saying that he came away with absolutely nothing. That's not quite true. A little more true, but not quite. But the thing that I think a lot of people are missing is that what took place over there was a business meeting. a meeting between the Western oligarchs and the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party, which puts two economic systems at a table facing off in a showdown. That's really what happened. It was two economic worlds colliding, but finding that they need to find a way to coexist, work together. And while Trump didn't come away completely empty-handed, what he did come away with is being portrayed as something for America, but in reality, it's not for America. It's for the big corporate bosses, the billionaires who went to China with him. Think about it for a minute. What really happened over there? He took the CEOs or the top executives for companies like Boeing, Cargill, which is big ag, right? Big agribusiness. You had Elon Musk with Tesla, the guy from NVIDIA. So you've got the tech bros, you have a couple of them. You have aircraft industry, you have agriculture, technology, some, I think, energy interests there as well. And so what did he come away with? There was a deal on soybeans, but that's really nothing new. That's an extension of what they have already been negotiating and a framework that was already in place before that. So it will restore some of the lost soybean sales because the Chinese cut them off because of Trump's tariff war. Chinese held really all the cards at the table pretty much. You had this. What else did they come away with? There wasn't very much. I said before he went, they went there, they had something already worked out beforehand. I was quite certain because he wouldn't have gone if he didn't already have some sort of a deal in the bag, because he couldn't come back empty-handed. It would be a complete and total embarrassment. But what he came back with was really not very much new. The biggest thing that he came back here with was an order for 200 jets from Boeing, passenger jets. But even that is not a completely new thing. That's an extension or a massaging of a prior agreement, purchase agreement that had been sort of moving into a state of limbo because they'd purchased some previously, but now it's kind of restoring the process to bring 200 more of these jets exported from the U.S. to China. And I think that they've got... I think they can ramp it up to about 700, 750. Canada also, making some deals. And I think when you scale it, the two economies, Carney came away with much more in that way than Trump did on this trip. And in fact, these were not deals for the United States, in my view. These were specifically deals directly related to the oligarchs, to the big CEOs who went with him. It was like, I don't know who's paying for what, but I think they got a free trip to China to go over there and then collectively put a united front forward at a negotiating table to try to gain more access to the Chinese market, working together. And Trump's on their side, and he's bringing the leverage of the United States and tariff threats in order to get these already rich billionaire guys what they want from the Chinese. And the Chinese said, well, okay, we'll take a few more of your planes and we'll resume some of the soybean purchases, which we suspended because their farmers also were facing complete devastation because China is such a big consumer of soybeans. Canada had to grapple with that as well. But there he is. It was ridiculous on many levels to see Trump's basically going over there, bending the knee to Xi Jinping, a guy that he has been constantly criticizing, blaming for everything from COVID to you name it. I mean, spying and the drug problem and fentanyl. Every bloody thing is China's fault, and you can't trust China. And as soon as Carney went to China, Trump has a conniption fit, melts down on the internet, threatens to impose 100% tariffs on everything produced in Canada that would be exported to the United States, doubling the cost to American companies and consumers of anything produced in Canada. 100% tariffs if you move forward with your deals with China. Then what does he do? A couple of months later, he's on a plane. He heads off to China, sits across from the table. He calls Xi Jinping his friend, doesn't have an unkind word for him during the trip and now even after. It's just ridiculous. His whole negotiating strategy has been laid out. It's exposed. People now see, how predictable he has become. The art of the deal. He didn't get much of a deal, but those big billionaires, a few of them did. And the whole concept of America going over there to negotiate these American companies, that's a falsity as well, a fallacy. It's completely fake. These companies are not American companies. Tesla, Elon Musk and Tesla, they already have massive investments in China right now. They produce Teslas in China. So you have these companies that are already doing business with China. And not only that, they're not owned by Americans exclusively. They're all owned by shareholders, sometimes through investment management companies, and sometimes through direct stock ownership by individuals. But all of these companies are multinationals owned by stockholders around the world. It's all traded on the stock exchanges, and people from around the world buy the shares of the companies now. And if you go back to, the 50s and 60s, say, General Motors, Ford, these companies, they did have shares, and they did, have sometimes some foreign investment within the companies themselves, but there was a different culture, and the ownership structure was somewhat, more American centric. And the head offices for these companies were definitely in like Detroit, in Detroit, and they were building V8s, and they had a sense of community responsibility, social responsibility that came with the growth of the companies. It all started to get hollowed out really in the 70s and certainly in the 80s, where the big corporations just lost their sense of corporate responsibility to the communities and the country that they were born of. I was through that old Packard plant a few times in Detroit, burned out building, just a symbol of free market failure in that respect, where, just a tragic thing. I think I showed you pictures of that a couple of years ago. It sat there like an empty, decaying hulk in the center of the most economically depressed part of Detroit. So much opportunity lost. But GM, Ford, Chrysler, the big three. It was a different thing back then. Now they're all multinational companies, and this concept of, you got to buy a Ford or you got to buy a Chevy. Get yourself a Chevy truck. These are not American companies, and these guys sitting at the table, they were there representing their companies and themselves because they're all big oligarch billionaires. And they're not committed to America. They're committed to profits. They've lost their touch with humanity. Their companies have. Tesla. They used a lot of American taxpayer money, and I think Canadian to some degree too, to build the company. Carbon tax credits, research grants, you name it, tax breaks, on and on and on. Tesla is a company that's certainly not based on free market capitalism, but it is based on capitalism. And there is a difference. They're two different things, but they easily mesh. But the Chinese, they're not really free market capitalists. They're central market capitalists. But the emphasis on the government having heavy control over all these big companies that they have, and they've got their own economic problems, which I won't dig into tonight. But in some respects, there are real similarities between the way the United States is set up economically today. The difference is you've got the big billionaires club on the U.S. side. That, in their view, is the free market. But I'll tell you, it isn't really a free market because it's a billionaires free market club, and we ain't in it. Okay. Did you have a seat at the table? Donald Trump is supposed to represent you and me and Americans and the West, and certainly America first. But I think those billionaires had first dibs on front row seat at the negotiating table. Are you waking up?
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We have been talking in the past year about technocracy, the technate, right? I've been talking for longer than that about Alexander Dugin, the philosopher, Russian, his political ideology, Eurasianism. There are other names that are applied to it, even just Duginism, which calls for the restructuring, a new world order, carving the world up into spheres of domination, influence. China in its sphere of domination in Asia. You have Russia that, in his view, will become the dominant power over all of Europe. And then you have North America and the United States dominating every country in the Western Hemisphere. I'm just telling you that the MAGA movement is part of that. Whether they're even aware, I don't know, but the people leading it certainly are. Some of the people have met with Dugin. They have adopted many, really, their ideology meshes with Duginism. And it's this illiberal, anti-liberal ideology being used to fuel or direct and coordinate an attack globally to tear down and restructure, rebuild, reset a world divided into three spheres of domination. Other media influencers finally coming around and realizing what is going on. In the last 6 months, I've heard finally some major influencers picking up on this, beginning to understand that that is really at the core of a lot of what is going on. Duginism and this restructuring into 3 spheres of domination. Today, Rick Wilson over at the Lincoln Project posting this. This is just a short clip from his, I think this is his Substack video. This is a guy who was, heavily involved in the Republican conservative movement for a long time, but has drifted away because of what Trump is doing. And he's clued in, he's got it, and he talks about it right here.
Nothing about Donald Trump. Nothing about Donald Trump's entirely fallacious understanding of the power he has anymore in the world has intimidated the Chinese at all. They can't wait to get this guy. They can't wait to get him into a room where they'll say, "Oh, so you are the tallest, handsomest, smartest man who ever has been the president of the United States. And we would just like you to just do us a big favor and let us invade Taiwan. Let us take over South Korea, Vietnam." And by the way, the Vietnamese and the Chinese have been, that's been a scrap for a very long time. China looks at the Pacific as its sphere. And this spins off, not only, it sort of meshes up with the Chinese belief that Asia should be its zone of control, but it also meshes up with this sort of weird Alexander Duginist philosophy that a lot of folks on the American right have adopted, which is this sort of tripolar world. Xi gets and China get the Pacific, and Putin gets Europe, and Trump gets America North and South, Africa jump ball. And nobody wants to live in that world. It will not stand up the way people think it will stand up.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm just glad other people are cluing in, because you can't respond to something in a positive and effective way if you don't even know what's going on. That's why they have been able to gain so much traction and do so much. It's because they've been misdirecting people. They've been telling you that this group of people over here, they're the ones that are lying, and they've been lying about the people lying in order to take your attention off it, have you dismiss people that we really do need to be listening to understand where they're coming from. Not to say that some of the people on the other side have the answers, and there's a lot of stuff over there that we should be opposed to as well. But if you're not listening to one side at all, that's what they want, because they want you to not listen to their political opponents while they do the very thing that they're accusing the other side of doing. Does that even make any sense? How sinister is that? How warped is that? That's Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. It's all laid out in his book. That's the strategy. That's what you do. Whatever you're going to do that's bad, you blame the other side for doing it. If you're going to burn down a building, you burn it down and then you blame the firefighters, okay? Or you blame the owner of the building. If you're going to do something to disrupt an entire society by unleashing a virus, I'm just saying, if that were to ever happen, if you unleash it, you blame it on the victim. It's victim blaming. Or you, better than that, you get the victim to act in a way that makes them look suspicious, and if you get them to lock everybody down, and then you say, see how evil they are? You unleash the virus, you get them to lock everybody down, and then you say, you see what your government does to you? They're the ones who did it. They're the ones who unleashed the virus. Are you sure? Maybe they're just being duped too, because I don't think that they might be let in on the plan. Or if you're the guy who unleashed the virus, maybe you point your finger across the ocean and say, China, China, China. They did it. And they're going, well, we didn't do it. You're the ones who are funding the lab in our country. Like, I don't know. Even to this day, I don't know. I don't think we will ever know. Because whoever was responsible, if anyone was responsible, they're never going to come out and admit it or tell us. But you see a lot of blaming going on, and I don't think we can believe anybody right now in any government circle of any government because if they did it, they are going to lie about it and blame somebody else and create all this confusion and all this chaos. But I'll tell you this, even if it wasn't somebody or a government that did it, if it was just something from nature, certain people certainly exploited it, didn't they? Yeah. And if you really want to know who does something, sometimes all you have to do is just look and say, and ask yourself, who really benefited most? Now, here's the irony, and here's something that maybe a lot of people haven't really thought of. Certainly, Big Pharma seemed to benefit from it. So there's that. I don't know that they created it. Can't say for sure, but let's say, okay, they probably made a lot of money. Probably still do. But you know who's benefited the most? Just think. Just pause for a moment. Really think about it. No, it wasn't Justin Trudeau. No. All the people who screamed the loudest about it. Some political groups gained a lot of traction. Entire political movements, a political movement, not just in Canada, not just in the United States, but really globally. Who has benefited the most because of the lockdowns, the mandates, the people pointing their fingers at the people who are supposed to be protecting us and were maybe trying to, I think, but not blameless because they were maybe not wise enough to react properly to it. But yeah, in hindsight, I see a lot of benefit in terms of political money, donations, disruption in our society. Who's benefited the most from that? The political opposition that continues to call for the destruction of our government, to tear it all down. The people calling to tear it all down because we can't trust the media. We can't trust the government. We can't trust police. We can't trust this. We can't trust that. We can't trust anything. You can't trust anything. Oh my God, look what they did. And then I'm sitting there and I'm looking at a lot of these people. And as I'm watching all of this unfold over the past how many years sitting in this chair, well, I was duped by a lot of it from the beginning, like so many others, because I think some people made really bad choices and bad decisions and caved into public pressure because of fear and ramped it up, and it became organic, and that was a fear snowball that turned into a giant avalanche. But you look where we're at now, and you start to analyze what a lot of these people are saying. Who's lying? Really? Check it. Check the claims. Who's lying? Who's making money? That had no power, no influence, way out there in a political movement that prior had very little, if any, public support. I don't know if that's a conspiracy, but it certainly has become the reality where it's given rise to a lot of people who are doing the very thing that we've all been very afraid of for a long time, which is to destroy it, to tear it all down, and reset it.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, people asking in the chat, is there a movie tonight? Yes, there is. Just a short one. But we have something lined up. So we'll get into that very, very shortly. Just a little fun fact. As Trump and the U.S. delegation was leaving China, and I checked this, and it is true, and it's pretty much standard protocol. You know, they were given gifts and trinkets and things to bring back, and they didn't bring nothing back before they got on Air Force One. As they were leaving, departing, everything that they were given in China went into a garbage bin for security reasons. Here's what it looked like. Bring the audio down. So I understand that, like, Trump was given some rose seeds or something to plant roses, which he probably didn't bring back with him because they didn't want it on the plane. Also, they didn't take their own cell phones. They used burner phones specifically for this trip. So very concerned about security and maybe cell phones blowing up in their hands, or who knows, because China is, even now, an adversarial power. And why is that? Because, well, I don't think they trust each other. And Trump has been just had nothing good to say about China. And you just look at the people in the MAGA camp. Like, I have concerns about China and security. And yeah, I don't think China should be controlling our cell phone infrastructure, but I don't think the United States should be either at this point. I wasn't so concerned about it before. In fact, I was very open to it for a long time. When U.S. cell phone companies wanted to come to Canada some years ago, I was very much in favor of it. I said, yeah, just let them in, more competition, lower prices, they'll invest, it'll create more jobs, lower prices. But now what Trump has put us through, certainly while he's around, and if any of that ilk continue to hold power over there, and there's any kind of a threat to Canada and and our existence as a country because of all this U.S. influence, not just from the government, not just from the MAGA movement, but from the big companies within that political ecosphere. That's where all this influence from the U.S. side is coming from. There's big money over there, and they've got their sights especially set on Alberta. Kevin O'Leary is their guy. That's very much evident. AI data centers, the big one in Utah. Oh, I forgot there was a really interesting clip. I don't have it tonight. Maybe I'll re-cue it for tomorrow. Where he's accusing some of the opponents of the big data center, which is going to have the biggest natural gas electrical generator in the United States as part of it, in this huge facility, bigger than the geographic footprint of Manhattan. It'll burn, I can't even remember how much electricity. More power, I think it's more, I can't remember the total amount, but it's more than the entire state of Utah, this one facility. Anyway, Kevin O'Leary is their guy. And it's big U.S. money, big U.S. oil money, tech money, AI money, Bitcoin money. That's why they want these AI data centers. It's crazy when you think about it. Why? They're going to burn constantly and pollute water constantly in Salt Lake. And they'll do it in Alberta too, because they're going to build a similar facility up in Alberta. I don't hear too much negative about it, but I don't know. You maybe should take a look at that out there, folks, because it's going to have a major impact on your communities, wherever it's going to be built. So they're going to burn natural gas, massive amounts of it. And you know what they're going to be doing? They're going to be mining for Bitcoin, guaranteed. When you think about that, how insane is that? To burn such a valuable resource, which we need to heat our homes, to create pharmaceuticals, oil and natural gas. They're going to burn all this energy to mine for Bitcoin, which is just lines of computer code. Because if you bring all that computing power to bear, use AI on top of it in order to figure out the fastest path to break the code to get all the Bitcoin, which is imaginary anyway. And for what? And it won't even exist if there's no energy left, because the whole thing is dependent on you can't have Bitcoin without electricity to power the computer infrastructure to keep it alive and in the cloud. People are crazy. What is the price of Bitcoin? It crashed there, about a month or two ago, right? And I've been tracking it a little bit. It was down in around the $60,000 price point. It was up well over 100,000, and I'm talking US dollars for one Bitcoin, which is in itself kind of, and in concept, pretty freaking weird. But it shows that, these Bitcoins are split up into fractions of Bitcoins. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin to invest in it. But tonight, where are we at? 79,169.80 for Bitcoin. I confess, I bought a little bit of Bitcoin quite some time ago, but being an impoverished journalist, I didn't have that much to put in, so I don't have that much in it now. And it's like it's fractions of a fraction of a fraction of Bitcoin. But I did a long time ago. I put some in there. I don't even know what it's worth now. It's just sitting over there, but it's hardly worth anything. It went up and down a little bit. But if you got in early, you can make a gazillion dollars. But I think that there's a real danger here that eventually it's all going to go to nothing. So we'll see how resilient this is as a security. I don't think it's really at this point, it hasn't really shown that it's a viable alternative to currency. People have not adopted it to buy things with it. They're buying it and holding it. And then when things go bad, they dump it. And these meme coins, Trump and his meme coins, they got freaking rich. But the Trump meme coin, that was a pump and dump. They create the meme coin. It's just lines of code. They get all these people to invest in it. I can't remember the total amount there, but I understand that even through that, they've made close to $1 billion. And it went up to initially like $75, and now it's down. It's lost 96% of its value. So all the people who invested in it and bought as it was going up lost their shirts. And these are Trump supporters. I don't know how. I guess you think you must be in a cult if you get completely ripped off and you still support the guy. The one big rich guy, I think it's the same guy who bought the banana that was taped to the wall, and he paid so many hundreds of millions or whatever for that. He's suing Trump over that. So that's a pending court case, but he says he still supports Donald Trump. These things don't have any regulation attached to them, and they increased in value many times over after Trump was elected because he pivoted from being against cryptocurrencies altogether, calling them a scam, to embracing them during the last election campaign. because now you see why, because his family issued their own coin, Trump coins. Made a bunch of money on it. He controls what the regulations are. So at the, from the pressure from the cryptocurrency community, he refrained from and ruled back a lot of the regulations. So there's really nothing there, very little to govern or protect investors. There's no full disclosure requirements and things of that nature. Meanwhile, again, they point the finger over at China, especially Binance, right? And even here in Ontario, Binance was banned because they weren't in compliance. See, the regulations up here are much stricter, and they were not in compliance with the in Ontario with the securities board. So they got turfed. That was several years ago, and I think they're still not back in business here. China. He's doing the same thing down there. And there, who else went on that trip to China? Eric. He's just there as part of the family. Right. Yeah. His son gets a front row seat at the billionaires gala in China too. Are you connecting the dots on that one? Yeah. Because, he can't, although Trump himself, I think he still has a lot of transactions going on, like a gazillion of them. I have to look up the total numbers, but there's Eric Trump, who is helping to run the Trump family businesses on Air Force One with his dad, going to a meeting to do trade deals with the Chinese, the CCP directly. And then he's out there. He might as well have come on over here and I'm open for business on this free trip to China, this trade mission. Does he have the best interests of the United States? Is that America first or is that Trump first? There's a real conflict of interest there. This is why you're seeing all this concern about the stock market going up and down and energy investments and so on. Because as soon as Trump makes an announcement, prices go up, and then he makes another one and the prices go down. And if you know about it in advance, or you figure out what's going to happen because you have basically inside information, it amounts basically to insider trading. And it's very clear that that's been what's been going on, because he's consulting, he's talking about what he's going to do, before he goes to Iran with this little excursion, this military excursion. He's telling people like Howard Lutnick and these others, many of whom are very savvy traders, that they come from the world of Wall Street. And if they're in these meetings and they know that Iran is about to be attacked, if they know that the U.S. Navy is going to block the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, then you know how to invest your money before everybody else. So you can make the trades in advance, knowing full well what the market will do, because you know what geopolitical event is about to happen before anybody else. And that's illegal. But hey, as Richard Nixon said, it's not a crime when the president does it. And I guess maybe not, because he has total immunity. So he really is above the law in many respects. And the people around him, they all probably feel very protected because he has the power of the pardon. So even if they get caught, I don't know where these financial laws might come into play with respect to presidential powers and pardons, because it depends on what level of government is and what district these charges might be laid in and so on. So I'm not as well informed on U.S. law as I need to be to comment fully on this thing, but largely presidents who are served well by people who break the law on their behalf, end up being pardoned. Although not so much during the Nixon administration, because all the president's men basically paid a price in the end. But the one guy who paid a big price in terms of reputation, but not in terms of going to prison, was Richard Nixon. Because even there, a president who did such dishonest things and facilitated, enabled, and financed with payoffs, even criminal things. Even he, Richard Nixon, was pardoned in the end by the guy who came in to replace him, Gerald Ford, President Ford. It's okay. We forgive you.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I know the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz continues tonight. Over in Ukraine, Zelensky has been posting that they have uncovered intelligence on the Russian side. I think I have the clip. Here we go. And I guess they have some receipts to back up these claims, but he's saying that they have Russian documents outlining targets for strikes in Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities, targeting political and military facilities where army leadership and government officials are often located, including the capital. So, according to what Zelensky is posting, he's saying the Russians have been nursing the plan for a long time, and now after Iran becoming active again, trying to locate where the leadership of Ukraine is and track their movements so they can launch some sort of an attack. And not just Ukrainian leadership, but also intelligence agencies, special services. But he's vowing to continue with the resistance, and all indications are that while the Russians were thinking they would make gains this spring with new offensives, it's actually gone the other way. And they've lost ground. Here's a clip of Zelensky.
Українці, українки сьогодні вдалося повернути.
We brought 209 of our people home. Let's bring the audio down a bit. I'll read the captions.
Додому 209 наших людей. 205 військових,
205 military personnel who had been held in captivity, most of them since 2022, as well as 4 civilians.
З 22-го року та ще 4 цивільних, які були захоплені в полон
Captured by the Russians last year in the Sumy direction.
росіянами торік на Сумському напрямку. Цей обмін
This exchange is the first stage of the large-scale exchange we agreed on in the 1,000 for 1,000 format, which was supposed to be the ceasefire that Donald Trump said that he brokered during the 3-day period covering the May 9th military parade in Moscow. We are working to ensure there are further stages as well. It is always one of the best and most hopeful pieces, because that exchange was supposed to take place before, but I guess finally they got some movement on it. It is always one of the best and most hopeful pieces of news when our people return home from captivity.
Я хочу подякувати
I want to thank the
посередникам,
mediators, the
Сполученим
United
Штатам
States.
Америки. Ми говорили з ними
We
напередодні
spoke with them
9
ahead of May
травня.
9th about the
Політичне
political
гарантування, щоб
guarantees needed to ensure
домовленості
these
були
agreements are implemented.
реалізовані. Окремо я хочу
I also
відзначити
want to
усіх
particularly
наших воїнів,
recognize all
які
our
на
warriors who,
фронті своїми
through their
сміливими
courageous
діями
actions on the front
забезпечують
line,
для
ensure the
України
replenishment of
поповнення
Ukraine's
обмінного
exchange
фонду.
fund. That's on prisoners.
Кожен український
Every Ukrainian unit that delivers this result is helping
який забезпечує цей результат, допомагає повертати людей
bring our people
додому.
home from captivity.
Сьогодні ж була детальна
Today, there
нарада
was also a detailed meeting
з
with
нашими
our
розвідками,
intelligence
та
agencies, the
зовнішньою
Defense
розвідкою,
Intelligence of Ukraine, the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Security
Службою
Service,
безпеки України та Генеральним
Ukraine and
штабом
Ukraine's general
України.
staff.
Кілька
Several
важливих
important
речей.
issues were
Звісно,
discussed.
що
Of
ми
course, we must
маємо
respond to Russian strikes,
справедливо
and Ukraine was hit pretty hard. I think 14, 16 people killed
та відчутно відповідати на
just overnight, I believe,
всі російські
against
удари
our
по наших
cities and
містах і
villages in
селах.
just a
Я
tangible
погодив
way.
деякі
I
формати.
approved certain response formats.
Минулої ночі
Last
ворог
night, the
вже
enemy
бачив
already saw
влучання,
strikes hitting,
зокрема по
in
їхніх
particular their oil
нафтових
facilities and
об'єктах та
military strikes.
військових.
And that is also true. Ukraine did take out a major oil processing facility. I'll see if I can find you video of that, but at least we're mentioning it.
Об'єктах операції
We're
продовжують.
continuing these operations. Our intelligence services are also performing effectively. And that single facility taken out overnight, I think it accounted for like 5% or more of total oil refining capacity inside Russia. So they've been pretty aggressive about taking out the oil industry infrastructure within Russia itself. He says, first, we clearly understand what is
Чітко розуміємо, що обговорюється між Росією та
between Russia and the leadership of
керівництвом
Belarus.
Пішла зараз
The Russians have
більша
recently stepped up
активність
their activity.
росіян. Я маю на увазі в
I mean, in
розмові з
talks with
Олександром
Alexander
Лукашенком.
Lukashenko,
Хочуть значно
they want to
більше
draw Belarus
втягнути
much deeper into the
Білорусь
war
у війну, та саме з території Білорусі
and launch
розпочати
additional aggressive
додаткові
operations
агресивні
precisely
операції або
from Belarusian territory, either against our
Чернігівсько-київського напрямку,
Chernihiv, Kyiv, or against one of the NATO
проти однієї з країн
countries
НАТО, які поруч з
bordering
Білорусі.
Belarus. Of course, we will continue defending Ukraine,
захищати Україну, захищати
defending our
наших
people,
людей,
Ukrainians.
українців. Я доручив нашим
I
силам
instructed
оборони
Ukraine's
та
defense and
безпеки
security
України
forces
підготувати план
prepare a
реагування
response plan, and we will review
та затвердимо.
and approve it at the staff meeting.
Чернігівсько-київський напрямок ми
We will
будемо
strengthen
посилювати.
the Chernihiv-Kyiv direction.
Партнери теж
Our
знають,
partners
що
are also aware of what is
відбувається, і
happening
до чого схиляють
and what
Білорусь.
Belarus is being
Є у
pressured
нас
into.
і російські
We also have
документи,
Russian
які
documents
пропонуються
outlining
цілі
targets
для ударів по
for strikes in Kyiv, strikes on Kyiv and other
Києву і по інших наших містах, по
Ukrainian
політичних
cities,
та
political and
військових
military
об'єктах.
facilities where army leadership and government
Армії,
officials may be located, including here
по банковій.
on
Давно
Vancouver
вони
Street. They have been nursing this plan for a long time.
Цей план зараз після Ірану знову
Now, after
знову
Iran, we
шукають,
become alive
де ми
again, trying to
знаходимося,
locate us and to track
де ми
our
буваємо, і
movements.
так само по інших
The same
людей
applies to
з
other members of
українського
the
керівництва,
Ukrainian
з розвідки,
leadership,
наших
intelligence
спеціальних
agencies,
служб.
and our
Дехто там в
special
Москві
services.
так і
Some in
не
Moscow
зрозумів,
have
що
still failed to
українці
understand
ніколи
that
не
Ukrainians will
здадуть
never
свою
surrender their
незалежність в
independence
будь-якому
one
випадку.
way or another,
На
whether on
банковій
Bankova,
чи
that's where the capital is, and where government sits. We will not surrender our
меж
land,
банкової свою землю, свій суверенітет,
our
свою
sovereignty,
державу
or our
ми
state.
не здамо. Ще одне.
And one
Сьогодні
more
вранці
thing.
був
This morning,
на
I
тому
was at the
місці,
site in
де
Kyiv
росіяни знищили
where the Russians destroyed a residential building, an ordinary apartment block with their KH-101 missile.
житловий своєю ракетою
This is what I was talking about. Strike on Ukraine.
Х-101. Фактично
They
знесли
practically wiped out an
в'їзд,
entire
9
section,
поверхів.
9 floors.
Рештки ракети
Remnants
знайшли
of the
у
missile were
підвалі
found in the
будинку.
basement.
Загинули
24 people were killed. I
24
was way off. I said 14 to 16. I guess it's 24,
людини. Серед них 3
including 3 children,
дитини. Звичайні люди.
ordinary people.
Вони були просто
They were
в себе
simply at
вдома.
home, unfortunately.
На жаль. Мої співчуття
My
рідним
deepest
та близьким.
condolences to their families and loved
Важливо,
ones.
щоб світ
It
не
is important
мовчав
that the
про
world
такі
does
удари.
not remain
Важливо, щоб
silent about such strikes. And it is important that
підтримка для
support
України зберігалася.
Ukraine
Це
continues.
підтримка не для того, щоб ми
The support is not about us taking what belongs.
забрали чуже
To others, it is about helping Ukrainians defend what is ours, our freedom, our lives. We will certainly defend Ukraine. No matter what threats we face, Ukraine exists, and it won't leave. Russia must end this war of theirs. We need peace. Glory to Ukraine. One of the things that I've come to recognize and be concerned about is the similarities between what started this conflict in Ukraine, this war, and what is unfolding in Canada right now. The scenario is hauntingly similar. We don't hear too much about it over here because the other narrative is the one that is most prominent. But at the heart of this whole thing in Ukraine was a jacked up civil war, an effort to separate the country, to split it. And then a process, a political process, a referendum, a vote, and then support for the separatists from a superpower. God, I hope that doesn't happen here. I really don't. Stay with me.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
So we are going to have a movie here in a moment as we near the end of our news portion. We're going to pivot to Maverick Midnight Matinee, and I'll give you the details on that in a moment. But I should show you this first. This is these are the documents that we were just referred to. Saying that the intelligence services uncovered these. Targeting bunkers and targets, political, military. The seats of power, both in terms of government power, military authority, and actual infrastructure, but looking to take out the leadership. Decapitation strikes. Take out the military leaders and the political leaders in Ukraine. So that's what these documents, and these are just a couple of them, apparently, allegedly, show. So I just thought I'd show you a couple of the receipts just to help you decide for yourself whatever you want to think about that. Am I missing any other major news stories here tonight that we haven't covered? Oh, I don't think we're going to get too much into the U.S. scrapping the deployment of 4,000 troops to Poland. No big surprise there, as Trump really shifts in a dramatic way the focus of the U.S. military globally and pivots away from Europe, traditional allies. We'll see how far it goes. Oh, I know what I didn't tell you. Two things before we go to the movie. There's this AI story and this other story about kids right here. Kids and nicotine. Yeah. First of all, talking about AI and digital security, we mentioned CBDCs and data breaches and electors lists being published out in Alberta land. Well, here we have NordVPN threatening to leave Canada. They might, says, lawful access bill could lead to exit from Canada, major VPN provider says. And that's because NordVPN says it could pull out of Canada if the federal government's proposed lawful access bill is passed. It's reviewing the bill, seeing what this would do is it would compel VPN providers, which have the technology to reroute your internet path on the net so that your internet providers, so that your so the government can't see what your activity is online, keeps your online activity private. But a lot of these VPN providers, virtual private networks, they still have a record of where you go. They just don't do anything about it. They don't block access. It allows you to watch movies that otherwise would not be available in your country or your geographic area, things like that. Restricted access. If you want to watch news content on Facebook from other countries, you can still do that, or even news content online from Canada, but you can't do that on Facebook because they didn't want to pay the taxes, the tax fee in Canada, which people don't understand that either. They think it's just the government preventing Facebook from presenting the news content. No, the way it really works is Facebook was going to be, all the social media platforms have to pay a tax if they carry news content. And if they carry the news content, then the news organizations, which are declared to be either news or not news, but if they are news, then they would receive money from the social media companies through taxation. But anyway, NordVPN saying if this law goes through, they may leave Canada because the law would compel them to, when there are investigations into certain kinds of online crimes or crimes that need to be investigated using data collected online, that the VPN companies would be compelled to give up that private information. And they're saying, well, wouldn't want to do that. So if the law is passed, we might just not provide our service in Canada anymore. So there's another little wrinkle in the evolution of technology that we as a society will need to grapple with, because a lot of this stuff is kind of new. You know, we need to find solutions, answers. The other thing that I've been taking note of, and it's funny, I guess it's not funny or even ironic, because this stuff is being fed to me now because I've been looking into nicotine, these nicotine pouches. Because I've noticed, and maybe I'm late to the game, excuse me while I clear my throat. Maybe you've noticed as well, and it's been documented in some other work, but I think I might be digging into it a little bit more. People, influencers on the right, whatever the right is, but on the right, conservative, populist social media streamers, they have been pushing, I would say promoting, these nicotine pouches, and in particular, most often, the brand Zyn. Now, Tucker Carlson, I've highlighted this previously. He now has his own brand. He at first was like pushing Zyn aggressively on his podcasts, then pivoted away, and then he launched his own brand of nicotine pouches. I mean, so now what I've been noticing is some of these influencers are using smoke-free tobacco or these nicotine pouches during their broadcasts. I've noticed at least one politician that I might bring attention to kind of promoting it by brand. So I might highlight that in the days ahead. Also, it's now coming to light that, well, there's money being paid to, I think, some of these online social media influencers through sponsorships in order to promote these nicotine products. This is very controversial. And this is all about big tobacco. This is like big tobacco 2.0, in my view, trying to find ways to keep their business model alive. As fewer and fewer people smoke, they're now promoting these nicotine products, pure nicotine. So there's a synthetic version that they put out there, and there's natural stuff that comes right from tobacco, but it is the big tobacco cigarette companies with just a new product, a new way to push the drug that got probably billions of people at this point addicted worldwide. And in America, they always promoted this stuff through culture, mass media. I'm finding, I think back to donut shop. We talked about Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donuts coming into the marketplace. I think back to, the 70s when donut shops were effectively gas chambers because they were a place where people would go and smoke their brains out while they would eat donuts and drink coffee. I remember when the smoking bans came into place and how that became a big issue of rights and, but you think back even further, the way that cigarettes were promoted as a form of liberation, freedom for women. Well, there's not too much freedom in addiction, in my view. I'm all about freedom, and products are products that people make choices, and there are warning labels right on the product. So there's that aspect to it. But we put these laws and regulations in place against the promotion and advertising of tobacco products because we know that they cause harm, because we know that they cause cancer, emphysema, all kinds of suffering at end of life, and shortens life. People can choose that, I guess, if they want to. They can still do it today. There are taxes, sin taxes, a carbon tax on cigarettes, if you will. But what I'm seeing right now is most of these products have still not been approved for sale in Canada, not even entirely in the United States. And there are rules against advertising them on platforms like television, radio, magazines, just as you can't advertise tobacco products really legally on television, radio, traditional media. But there are other ways to promote things through things like product placement, where you have people use a product in a movie and show the label, or even just show them using the product. If you show people smoking, it normalizes it, and people will, if you glamorize it, make it look sexy. You have a supermodel smoking a cigarette, or even if they're eating bugs, as Nicole Kidman did, kind of promoting the idea of eating bugs. Oh, look, Nicole Kidman, sexy movie star. She ate bugs. It must be cool to do that. You might not think it has an impact on you, but it does. It has an impact on everybody. This is how they promote products. And certainly the tobacco industry has always done that kind of thing. But now they're promoting these tobacco products, smoke-free tobacco, and just pure tobacco or derived nicotine. It looks to me like they're finding ways to get these influencers to mention their product, to use the product, to make it look cool, to make it look like, it's a conservative or populist thing to do. If you want to be part of the club, this is how this is how you do it. And there are, Tucker Carlson says that Zyn is a girl's brand now. If you want to be a man, you got to use, I don't remember the name of his, but this is why I mentioned in the lyrics to that song that we created, right? Chemical addiction. And then, I'm even seeing it wind its way into the political sphere. And I don't think it's just genuine concern for people's health where they're saying, let's have a smoke-free society. No, they're promoting these products because they want to get you addicted. You might not be smoking, and maybe in some ways it might not be as harmful as smoking, but there are still serious health ramifications from these tobacco products and unintended consequences as well. Here, let me show you. Kids under 6 years of age are being poisoned because they're seeing parents, adults using the products. And just like kids, how many kids have watched their parents smoke and then get cigarette butts or whatever and try smoking behind their parents' backs, even when they're very young? Happens all the time. Well, it's the same thing with these nicotine pouches and smoke-free products. U.S. children ingesting nicotine pouches, according to a new study. Several children in intensive care, and there's an uptick in poisonings as popularity of the pouches explodes. This is in The Guardian. Other reports of this study covering it. Reports of U.S. children under 6 ingesting nicotine pouches, the small rectangles containing flavored nicotine that have exploded in popularity, jumped 763% in just 3 years in this new study. Several of the children ended up in intensive care after ingesting the pouches. The uptick in poisonings comes as the country has seen a recent surge in sales of nicotine pouches. Zyn, that's the most popular brand, a brand of nicotine pouches produced by the Stockholm-based Swedish Match, which is owned by the cigarette manufacturer Philip Morris International, has become particularly popular with the hashtag Zyn, accumulating more than 700 million views on TikTok and right-wing commentators such as Tucker Carlson promoting it. The pouches come in flavors such as citrus and mint, which public health experts say makes them more attractive to children and to teens. I can go on about it, but you got the idea. Kids getting access to it. Oh, look, my parents do it. It's cool. I'm going to put this in my mouth too. And there are negative health effects from this. Gum disease, irritation of the throat, and other serious health problems arise from, continued use of these products. And the biggest thing, I think, is that it's highly, highly addictive. You're concerned about fentanyl? Nicotine is one of the most addictive substances, chemicals in the world, ever created, ever discovered, natural or not. I'm not buying into the marketing and the rhetoric coming from the people promoting it, these products, as saying that they make you an unstoppable force. Oh, no doubt that I don't use it. I don't know. I have as much clarity of mind as I need. I don't need to get addicted to a product that will cost me untold amounts of money before I die. Money that I would need to spend, whether I liked it or not, because I would become addicted to it. So I would need it. I would have a dependency. And then another big corporation with a long history of enslaving people through addiction would just get that much richer No, thank you. You tell me in the comments if you want me to elaborate on this more in future broadcasts. I don't like it. That's my personal opinion. And I just don't buy the argument from the politician who I took note of the other day making this argument. And there have been actually a number of them. And the influencers who are saying, no, we need these products because we need to lift the regulations and we need to open the market to Zyn in Canada because these are good products that help people stop smoking. Maybe. But I also see that they're getting a whole new generation, a whole new customer base addicted with the help of some people who we're supposed to trust. And I'm telling you, my trust in so many of them right now has been greatly eroded. We'll come back on the other side of this, and I'll tell you what tonight's movie is going to be.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Do you guys like these teleplays? I like them from like the 50s, 60s, especially the 50s and 60s. You know, One Step Beyond, Twilight Zone, those kinds of things. There are quite a number of them from that era. To me, it's sort of like live theater for television. Well, tonight we have science fiction theater. This is there are a number of these that are available, quite a few from season 2. And so tonight we're going to bring you an episode called Signals from the Heart. And this is back in 1956. Now, if you are watching on YouTube tonight, you will need to go over to Rumble and watch over there because YouTube doesn't like it when we run any of this stuff. So we always jump off YouTube when we begin on Friday nights, our Maverick Midnight Matinee episode at the tail end of the broadcast. And this one won't keep you occupied too late tonight. It certainly won't be on until midnight because it's just a teleplay. And I'm only going to run the one episode tonight. So this will occupy you for about a half hour. And it will be a half hour well spent. And with that in mind, let's get this show on the road, okay? One moment while I cue up the intro from Maverick Midnight Matinee, signing off from YouTube. And I will see you guys, all you Maverick Midnight Matinee maniacs, on the other side of this.